5 Seals of Magic, a new game by Mayday Games. I picked it up at Gen Con 2017. Players control wizards and familiars that are moving around the dungeon, breaking magic seals. Always good when you're breaking stuff, that's fun. Breaking magic seals. Sometimes just those seals are blocking passages, so by breaking them you move to the next area, and as you're moving from area to area you're trying then to break seals that protect scrolls, and you're collecting magic scrolls. Collecting these scrolls is the point of the game, what scores you points and what determines who the winner is. Let me show you how the game works. This is a general view of the board of the game, or a list of how the board of the game may look like. This is the setup, or I should say, this is the configuration of the board for 4 players. The board is modular, based on these pizza slice puzzle pieces, and each piece has labels of this kind on the edges. You simply select the ones that have the number corresponding to the number of players that you have. This is the setup for 4 players, and then you place those labels adjacent to one another. And so, for example, with 2 or 3 players, you do not have the 2 or the 3 printed on all pieces, so you do not use every piece. It's a nice idea. Also, you have a piece here. The center represents the central and starting area. Each player has a wizard and a corresponding familiar that basically has the main job of annoying the heck out of the players, blocking passages for them. Around the board you have areas where you will place dice, depending on the color, and the number of dice that you place there depends on the number of players. So there will be one on each. On each area that you see here, there will be a pool of dice. At the beginning of the turn, each player selects 3 dice from all the available dice in the pools there. Then you have all of these icons here, which are instrumental, they're key for setup. And I'm not gonna set up the game. There's just not a chance in heck that I'm gonna set up the game, because setting up the game is very laborious. It's a real pain in the rear door of the dungeon, and I'm not gonna do it. I'm going to tell you how you could do it if you so desire to do. You see these icons here, these round icons, these are seals that block the passages. So on each of these symbols you will place a token, a round token with the corresponding number. 2 where you see a 2, 3 where you see a 3, and there are increasing numbers, and you have 4, 5, and 6s. So the central area has the lowest value, and then larger values as you move towards the edges of the board. But what happens here is that you will have pools of these tokens. So I will have a pool of tokens labeled with 2, then another one with 3, 4, 5, and 6. As you can see, I keep them in separate baggies. So you open the corresponding baggie, you shuffle them, and you place them randomly. So I place the 2 randomly, which is great on one hand, because that means that each game I will have a different combination of colors, but that means that I need to keep each pool separate when I set up the game. And also during the game you will remove these, and you'd better keep them separate too, so you do not have to sort them out, because at the end you will have otherwise a big bunch of tokens, and some kind of look like one another, like the 2 and the 3, so it can be a real pain to divide them. So first I place a token with all of the 2 on the seals, so then I do the same with all the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 6s. Then you will see that there are these other spaces here with rectangular areas, and again with number symbols. This is where you place the scrolls, that is tiles that will give you special effects during the game. And there are several sets. They are labeled with numbers from 0, and then again you'd better keep them in separate baggies. We have the 0, then we have 1, which I can't find. There you go. Then we have effects with 1, 2, 3. As you can see, there are different icons on each set, and each set will give you different effects. In each game, you will use two such sets. Suppose that in this game I'm gonna use the basic tiles, and the tiles number 2. Then I grab the tiles for the two sets from the basic set, and I shuffle them together, but not all together. All of the 2s from both sets together, all of the 3 tiles from both sets together, all the 4, the 5, and the 6. So I have these separate stacks based on the value, because then I randomly place those scroll tiles on the corresponding spaces. So I take the here, I draw a random 2, a random 3, a random 3, a random 4, and so on and so forth. And of course, before you set it up, you have to re-separate them together. And you re-separate the two sets, the basic and the level 2 or the level 3, etc., etc. If it sounds confusing, is because it's really laborious, it takes a while, and it is super annoying because you have to be extra careful not to mix together the components. Once you're done, gameplay is exceedingly simple. The players all roll their initial dice at the same time and place them in front of themselves. Then when it is your turn, you can spend dice to perform actions, which usually means to break seals or to acquire scrolls. Also remember, you will have these tiles here, these scroll tiles, and you can use them. That means you flip a tile face down to generate its effect. For example, if I have this one and I flip it face down, I can exchange the color of a die that I have while keeping the value the same. So for example, if I have this one here and I use that tile, I could switch it like this, but I have to keep the 4. Other game effects will give me other things. So this one allows me to reroll a green die. This one gives me a victory point at the end of the game. Other will allow me to get more dice, to add them to my pool. It's pretty much the sort of effect. You're manipulating your pool of dice. And what you're doing to use the reason why you're using these effects and these dice is to break the seals. So you're opening paths in the dungeon to reach the area with the scrolls, so you get more scrolls, but ultimately what you're trying to do is to get the scrolls that are marked 6, which are the most valuable in the game. So first you break some seals, etc. So during your turn, if you can, you must break a seal. To break a seal, you spend a die that has the value of the seal or higher. With this one, I could break that seal, which is a value of 2, if there were a token there with... again, there was a token there and the color was green. So you spend dice to break seal that need to have that value or higher and need to be of the matching color. That also means that if it was blue, this would still be good, because blue, I have a blue die here and the value is higher. One dice are absolutely useless, and you need to use game effects to increase them, to switch them, to reroll them, to do something, because if you roll a bunch of ones at the beginning of the game, it's really bad. So if I break a seal, suppose that there was green there, then I'm spending this die here, I discard the die, I break the seal, so I remove it from the board, and I move my wizard there. Then other players take their actions, and suppose here there is a blue, and I decide to break that seal, I spend this die, and then I move my guy there. You can also spend your initial scroll. Each player starts with a scroll representing their familiar. You can spend that to add a pip to a die that you have, or to move your familiar. You can use your familiar, move it to an empty location, so that blocks the players. Actually, you can move that to your location, and then when you move away, it stays there to block. Or you may send, not to an empty location, but you may send your familiar to a seal that you can break. Again, you have to be able to move it through locations that have been opened by breaking the corresponding seals. And the idea is, again, to block other people from getting in certain locations. It's super simple after that very demanding setup. You're rolling dice and you're okay, I had a 4, I do that. Okay, I have a 1, I use an effect to change it into a 2, and then I break that seal. It's very linear, very simple. Now, of course, there are a lot of game effects, a ton of tiles with a ton of different effects, but you will only use part each game, and at the end, you're simply manipulating dice, exchanging resources, switching, swapping things around. You're still trying simply to get the results and the colors that you need to break those seals. The game continues like this until a certain number of level 6 scrolls have been acquired, and that depends on the number of players. When that occurs, the game is over. The players count the pips on the scrolls that they have acquired during the game, plus the 6 level ones also have an extra pip there. Each pip is a victory point. You total the number of victory points, and the player with the highest total at the end of the game is the winner of the game. The components of the game are absolutely great. Those the art is great on the miniatures, on the characters. Heck, even when it comes to those icons, it's just very elegant. It's nice design, and the iconology is particularly effective, perspicuous, easy to read. Although there are really a lot of symbols. I mean, the Book of Magic that collects all of the effects is pretty daunting at the beginning, especially if you're planning to play this game with kids. But of course, the positive aspect of that is that you do not have to learn all of those icons at first. You'll learn the basic icons, and then one set of icons. You play the game, and then next time you again use the basic set and a different set, so you have a different range of effects. And then the following time you add different effects, if there is a following time, because I do not know that you're gonna play this game enough to really see all those effects, to learn all those effects, because the components are great, sturdy, the tiles are great, the board looks great, but gameplay is not all that interesting. It could be acceptable if that kind of gameplay, I roll dice. Oh, look at that! I have a 2 blue. I'm gonna break a 2 blue seal. I have a 4 green. I'm gonna break a 4, a 3, or a 2 green. That kind of gameplay, I roll dice, I move them around a little bit, and I use them to break seals. That kind of gameplay would be okay, would be interesting, if the game didn't have such an annoying process to set it up and then to put it away. And also, again, if it wasn't so heavily luck-based. But in a sense, again, even luck-based, I'd be okay if this was a game that right now we decide, why don't we play that simple, quick, luck-based game. In 5 minutes from now, I taught it to you. In 10 minutes from now, we're playing it. And 30 minutes from now, we put it back in the box after we played it once or twice. If it was a simple filler, if the logistics of the game were that of a filler, and the gameplay was that of a filler, then it'll be fine. It'll be fine. The problem here is that I think we have the logistics of a much bigger game and gameplay of a filler, and then you have the worst of both worlds. No, not necessarily. You simply have elements that do not justify each other. When I spend that much time setting up a game, then I want it to be like a big, heavy Ameritrash, a meaty war game, something like that. But then I spent all the time setting up the game, and I rolled dice, and I rolled a bunch of ones early on, and you start breaking seals and you get a scroll, and I keep getting bad results, and I fall behind, and there really isn't any way at that point for me to catch up, because you're ahead. You have more scrolls, so even if you roll poorly, then you can manipulate that, and after a while I get to the point where I get a single scroll, and then again I don't roll in ways that really make the scroll useful, because then also some scrolls are tied to certain dice and not others, and well, yeah, then I'm gonna get a bunch of dice that have to do with that scroll, but then the seals that I need to break are a different color. So it feels very luck-based. There are all of these amazing effects, but after all, if you don't have the right dice, you don't roll the right numbers, you cannot even implement those effects in ways that are really useful to you. So again, it feels very luck-based, as difficult to catch up if you fall behind. Yes, if you have more than 2 players, you can gang up against the leader, but then again, to gang up against the leader needs certain effects, that would damage you, but would really get me out of what I'm trying to do. And at the end, if I'm damaging the leader, I'm not doing anything for myself. In truth, I'm not really changing the relative balance of power in the game. It is just that I'm pretty much delaying both players. And again, that's not particularly exciting. I want to be able to catch up in a way that damages you, but does not completely slow me down. Otherwise, there is no point. So again, if this was a filler that I can set up in 5 minutes, teach in 5 minutes, and play in 10, I'll be okay with it. The problem is that sometimes I have quote-unquote played it for 10 minutes. That is, I just got the first couple of rolls, very bad rolls, very unfortunate, unlucky rolls. And after that, pretty much, I was in the game, but I didn't feel like I was playing. I was simply perfunctorily doing something, performing my turn so that the game could move on. But I knew I couldn't catch up. I knew that I was so behind, so I was just slowly seeing other players get into this positive loop and increasing their gap with me. So it just felt like going through the motions. In that sense, the game lasted 10 minutes for me, although unfortunately the game overall lasted much longer. So, I don't know. It looks great. I almost think those elements, those puzzle elements, I don't know, could be even good for if you're playing a role-playing game as a tactical mat for a fight in the dungeon. You know, get some miniature rules and use these components to fight a battle in the dungeon. But the game as is too much work to put it together, to teach it to somebody, that is to teach the game effects, and then to put it away for what it is, which is a game that lasts less than an hour and that you may enjoy for considerably less. If you're particularly lucky early on in the game, you fall behind and then you're simply struggling and you lag behind for the entire game, then there isn't much there. Too much work for a game that is about rolling dice and matching them if you're lucky, and rolling dice and not matching them and not getting much to do if you're not lucky. So 5 Seals of Magic, it looks great, the components are great, but we need another game, we need another set of rules, we need something else that we can do with these components, because the components are great, but gameplay really isn't. It felt obvious, very predictable, again, very obvious. You know what the next thing is to do, and you know even sooner there isn't anything good for you to do, and once you realize that, there isn't really much that you can do. Unfortunately, underwhelming gameplay for great components. So when you put the two things together, well, it's not a great combo, really. It's not a great combo.